You're listening to The Problem with Poverty, a podcast that helps bring awareness to the causes and consequences of poverty, as well as ways that we can overcome the problems with poverty together. Our company, Community Action Partnership of North Alabama, serves 28 counties in our beautiful state. According to 2019 estimates by the U.S. Census, Alabama was the seventh poorest state with 15.5% of its residents living in poverty, as compared with a U.S. average of 11.1%. Our goal with this show is to highlight all of the opportunities that we and our partners have to help people overcome poverty as we focus on helping people, changing lives.
In our last episode, we introduced you to Edie Dugger and how her life was changed forever by trauma. In this episode, Edie shares how dealing with trauma affects her life today.
I take a lot of pride in my job, and there were questions about I felt that the quality of my work was being questioned, and instead of being able to have that conversation, I was just in a mental state of fight. And so, I lashed out and began what appeared to be a professional spiral, but it was all part of my journey, and to get to where I'm at now.
Well, that leads me to the next question about the Wellness in Our Workplace project program was implemented in the spring of 2020, right as the COVID pandemic hit. Great timing.
Yes.
As a CAPNA employee, what changes or differences do you see now as a result of the W.O.W. initiative in comparison to your experience with your trauma that dates back to 2015?
I'm very, what can you say? Wow. Wow. It's very, very encouraging to see the level of compassion and the level of outreach that we have for staff now. The amount of training and education that is given to leadership on how to lead with that level of compassion. I really think back to it, and one of the biggest things with me that was detrimental is that going into a hole, but also I began to feel irrelevant. I didn't feel seen. I didn't feel heard. And I take ownership of that. But I feel like now we, as a culture, are much more in tune with our people. We're much more in tune with seeing and hearing our staff. We have always done a great job of doing that for our clients. I feel like we understand that we are in the business of people and servicing people. But I feel like in the past, whether it was intentional or not, the idea of giving that same grace to our staff, you didn't see it quite as much, or it wasn't as prevalent. There were little pockets of it here and there, but as a whole, the culture was very, we've got business to do. We've got our clients to care for, and that's what we do. And that's not bad. I'm not saying that's bad, but we know now more about what people encounter on a daily basis, right? COVID. I mean, you think about COVID and what that has left. There is no person within this agency who was not touched, by COVID or impacted by COVID. And so we already know that everybody within this organization, actually everybody, period, has now a level of trauma that they may or may not have known they had before. But everybody knows it now, right? Everybody recognizes that trauma is prevalent. because we didn't have any choice with COVID, but to acknowledge that sometimes things happen and our whole world shifts. And so that COVID was global, right? Everybody's, it was an event, and everybody's whole world shifted. Well, in 2015, my whole world shifted then too. So, and there are other events within our lifespan. If you live a good long life, you're gonna have that ups and downs, and there are gonna be things that happen. We just need to be more aware and more in tune and noticing, which is, a lot of our conscious discipline stuff that we use with our littles. But, as grown-ups, we're just taller littles in a lot of ways. And so it's just important that, and WOW has done that. WOW has taken some of those big stressors. I know they've got grief counseling. They've got their grief calls. They've got financial calls. They've got nutrition calls. There's a lot of those support groups out there. For me, personally, I'm where I'm at because of support calls. And that was individual support calls that I received from, mental health. It has helped me to understand myself better. They walk you through some processes. I went into a leadership role at Moulton, first time I'd ever been in that type of leadership role. I think we are all leaders within the agency, but in where I was responsible for leading specific people. And I had a hiccup because, I didn't know. And there was still a lot of things within myself that I needed to work through to get to the point where I am now, where I can say I am leading authentically. I am leading genuinely. I'm actually leading through my values and what's important to me. But I had to walk through the conflict resolution, and there were times within that conflict resolution where I literally told my person, my support call, I was like, never mind, I don't want to do this anymore. You really have to take a good hard look at yourself and take ownership of your part in some of that. And I didn't like that. I didn't like having to turn that mirror around and acknowledge, those things. Because, generationally, we've had different philosophies on leadership. So, previous to me being in leadership, my ideas of leadership was those that had been passed down to me or mentored to me in that, never let them see you sweat. You don't let them know you don't know something. You carry your leadership, you carry yourself here in comparison, and I couldn't do that. That is not me. And so I struggled with that. There was this internal just fight of trying to meet that expectation that I couldn't meet because that's not who I am. And so I had to walk through a lot of that, and those support calls are what got me through that. And for me, the greatest byproduct of those support calls is that my staff watched me walk through that. And where my previous understanding of leadership would have said to me, oh, great, now they know that you can't do this. Now they know that you don't have it all together. Instead, it came back to, she's so genuine. You get what you see. She understands. Or, they saw me walk through that really hard stuff and really trying, and saw that I was doing that not just to be better within myself, but to be better for them. And that really inspired the culture that we've been able to put together there at Moulton of that school family and that support. And that's something that I believe has come from WOW, is being able to acknowledge that, the environments we are in, we are with each other a lot. And so we develop those relationships, and we develop that family atmosphere. Now, families don't always agree. Families don't always, get along. But we care enough, and, we're united enough in our vision and mission that we are able to move forward or have conversations that we know we care enough about each other to have those conversations. And so that's, we don't shy away from hard talks. We don't, if somebody's going through something, we don't, tell them or tell the others, just shy away, don't upset them or whatever. We're not harping on those things, right? We're not walking around just kumbaya, but because there is business to do. But we do take moments and acknowledge, life is hard. We all have things and going on, and so we just support each other in that, and sometimes we have to remind ourselves that it's a journey, and so we did a WOW challenge a while back for a weight loss. We did Biggest Losers, but that brought some unity, all kind of working towards the same goal, and I've seen the health improvements of some of my staff. We were supporting each other by not stopping and getting Krispy Kreme before work, and then we do birthday lunches, and so instead of ordering burgers or whatever, we started doing salad bars. Everybody brought their favorite salad ingredient or whatever, and so just those small changes, but they say so much to staff. They say, I see you, and I know it's tough, and I appreciate you, and if you need me, I'm here.
Which was the missing piece for you?
Outside of what I would say my closest inner circle of people that I let into that, but I didn't feel noticed. I didn't feel seen. I really felt irrelevant. There were many days at work I thought, no one would know if I was here or if I wasn't, and that was just that was hard. That was hard.
Well, because of your experience,
Mm-hmm.
and especially with adverse childhood experiences, but as an adult, what actions have you taken as a result of your experience to influence and affect others in the way that you wanted to see?
Well, I just try to live through my values. Like I said, I had to do some soul searching on what I wanted my legacy to look like as a leader. And I wanted it to be authentic and genuine to who I was. And, I feel like those experiences that I have helped me be very compassionate to my staff and our families. There's been opportunities to share so much, not great detail like we are here, but, share some of the information and some of what I've learned through the experiences that I've had. Having staff that have walked through tremendous grief and being able to look at them and say, I know it's there. It's okay. You don't have to act like you don't feel. You don't have to pretend you're okay. If you're not okay, you're not okay. And we'll work through that. If you need a minute, if you, what do you need? And, how can I help that? Not applying any more pressure than we already feel on ourselves, like I said earlier, to get back to normal or, to get over it. That you don't get over it. You learn how to live with it. And so that's where I want to use my experiences and in my position with staff is to be able to help them learn how to live with it, because it's there. That ribbon's tattered and barely hanging on, but it is there, and it'll always be there. It won't ever not be. And that's something. Even this past November, you hate anniversary dates, but they come. Those days come. And as much as I always focus on how my aunt lived and not how she died, that day still comes. And I still have all those memories. And so where I used to think, okay, people are going to be like, look, Edie, it's been 9 years. Come on. Just get to work. Do your thing. It's just another day. I this year really verbally gave myself permission to say, you know what? It's not another day. Not to me. It is a day that, like we said, it's a stamp in time where everything that preceded it was changed and everything post has been different. And so I really kind of lifted that guilt from myself to say, now, I still struggle with it, but it's hard to give up over 40 years of ingrained what leadership should look like. It's a work in progress to change what you've always known. But I've spent a lot of time really trying to let myself be okay with not being okay.
How did your experience affect your personal and professional trajectory from that defining line?
Wow, it changed completely. I am nowhere near where I was before. I learned so much about myself that I learned that the role that I had taken here, although I was very passionate about it, it was very isolating. And so knowing about myself now that as a person, I need people, right? I need that interaction to stay mentally healthy. I need, and I, to a degree, I got that in the position before, but not to the degree I get now. Even to say that for me professionally, it is more rewarding to be able to have that direct contact with our families, that direct contact with children. I had reconciled all of that in my mind. When I came to CAPNA, I had just graduated from Athens State with my bachelor's degree, had teaching certification. And so I anticipated being a teacher in a classroom, and I didn't do that. I came here and went into being a what is an ELC or classroom coach now, was an education resource specialist then. And where we met in the classroom. And so I had to kind of reconcile that at that time that, okay, I thought I was going to be in a classroom. I was going to have 18 little something others of my very own and have that direct contact with impacting their education and their growth and development. And that didn't happen. And so I reconciled that to say, okay, but I'm still having a reach. I'm just reaching through teachers by inspiring and coaching them. And I reconciled that was okay. And so then the opportunity came to expand that in that training capacity. And so I was really excited about that because it just seemed like it was growing that piece of me where I wanted to give that knowledge to even more of our staff. About children and development and teaching practices and those pieces. And I at one time I had somebody, another center director tell me, they said, you did good with the training. She said, but you're so good with the teachers, talking to the teachers, inspiring those teachers. And in that professional development role, I didn't get that direct. I didn't get to get in their classrooms as much and really be a part of that. And so it took, pretty much just coming full circle with that. But I had isolated myself to where in the position I was in, that it made it even easier for me in my mental health to pull further and further away. And in pulling further and further away, I lost sight of what the purpose and the meaning was behind what I was doing. And so I started looking for a new route. Part of it was I was given the opportunity to look for a new route, and part of it was that I embraced that, because I know I've watched in my years here, some people that have gone through maybe similar situations, and I've always been told that you can either let your situation make you bitter or better. And I just really wanted I wanted to come out on the other end better, not bitter. But it took a minute.
Just one.
Well, 2 or 3 minutes. But yeah, and so, I began to recognize a lot of myself, like I said, going through the conflict resolution and all that. So realizing that there is professional success, right? You think, you believe you're wanting to climb up that ladder, right? The success comes in moving up. But that's not for everybody. And or it's not an up, it's a lateral, and so it took me a minute to realize that, going up that ladder is not what was going to put me in leadership, or wasn't going to put me in a position where I felt accomplished, right? You just chasing that was not what was best for me. I feel more accomplished. I feel more successful in what I'm doing now. And that's one of the things that in my leadership role that I really work with my staff on, is talking to them about, I want you to be successful. And even thinking about having those hard conversations like was had with me, that, if you continue on this trajectory, you're not going to be successful. We can see the writing on the wall, right? And even if we don't want to see it, I hope in retrospect, though, there are some that I've had that hard conversation with that will now look back and go, you know what? She was right. They're not going to. But I can go back on my own and I will say, you know what? That was right. It was the right move for me. And even though the journey, like I said, was difficult at times, and I struggled with that and harbored some feelings for a while, I have found that peace and, like I said, decided to be better, not bitter.
So we have some final questions.
Okay.
For our listeners to chew on.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to someone who thinks that trauma is, quote, all in your head, and you just choose to be miserable?
I think it's not a completely false statement. And I know some people will be like, what? It's not a completely false statement, because you spend a lot of time in your head. For myself, there was a lot of that internal dialogue that was really kind of sabotaging my path, I guess. And so you don't have a choice with trauma. I didn't choose for that day to happen and to change my life. So no, that was not a choice, and that was not in my head that happened. Moving forward, I had choices, and I made the choices to the best of my ability of what I knew at the time. And now I know better, so I do better. But your biggest enemy is yourself. And that internal little monster sometimes that talks to you and feeds maybe some of those insecurities or feeds some of that negativity and doubt are there. So there's a little bit of something going on in your head. But of course I know that's not exactly how that's meant, but it's not a completely false statement. Now, choosing to be miserable, you have a choice of how you respond. You have a choice of what you give your power to. I think with age that gets a little easier to not let go of it. That's been my experience. Either that, or I've just learned, or I think I've been told by a few people, you get to a point in your age where you don't care, but that's not true. I do care. But you do have a choice. I really feel like life's all about choices, and we have those choices. And we make the best choices we can based on what we know. And I think that's where, as an agency, we have to come in and know more, and help our staff know more. We have, a family that, I think about with my grandmother, we started with the family, and, the way that she looked at things and the way that she experienced life really drove her decision making, and that influenced my mother's decision making, which then influenced my decision making, which, so that's how those cycles begin, in families or in society and cultures of making choices when it doesn't look like you're making a choice. We're not victims unless we choose to be a victim sometimes. And I'm not talking about Kay chose to be a victim. That is not the same thing. I'm talking more in the helping yourself or healing through or working through those situations, and how we can move forward from that. It takes knowing those skills and the strategies, to get through that. I didn't have those in 2015. It took a lot of soul searching and a lot of time and several friends with kicks in the butt to help me to see that. And the good thing is I have my children are adults, and I have the opportunity maybe to share that with them now, and maybe they won't have to wait till they're in their 40s to realize some of that. Yeah. People can't do to you anything that you don't let them do when it comes to some of that. And so we have to learn how and what we need to protect our mental health.
And I reflect on what you said earlier about it's been 9 years, but that day is still that day. Mm-hmm. And it's a reminder for everybody that there's not a timeline to decide, all right, today I'm okay. Mm-hmm. And from now on I'll be okay. It's just non-existent.
No, it's day to day. I've learned over the years what my triggers are. There's been a couple of times when I've had to reach out to my support calls, and because a certain situation was a trigger. We work with families who, by all definitions, poverty in itself is a trauma to live through. And so we have that secondhand trauma from dealing with what we are seeing, not dealing, but seeing what we see on a daily basis. We see some very sad things. And so we have to learn how to navigate that and not let that bring us down or, influence our mental health to the point where we don't have what we need to give to others. There's been plenty of times when things have happened in the center and I've stepped out or I've which I've realized is one of my best skills and coping skills with things, is when things come up, knowing I don't have to have an immediate response, I don't have to have an immediate answer. I can step back, I can reflect, I can kind of think about how I want to respond, or what intent do I have in my response, to make sure that it is something that I am comfortable with. I believe that's been the biggest thing for me, is really looking at how I can pause, basically, and not respond until I'm comfortable with what. That way, when you do that and you have a second to reflect, then I don't have to worry about regretting something I've said or speaking out of emotion, which can sometimes get us in trouble.
I have one final question.
Okay.
It's similar to one we ask every guest, but it's trauma specific.
Okay.
What does someone experiencing trauma have to do with me, and why should I care?
Well, I believe it goes back to what we were saying with the demographic that we work with. But then also going all the way back to, like I said, COVID, everybody has a level of trauma, whether they realize that or not, probably, from living through the whole world shutting down. And, being able to identify that what is healthy for you, or what your response needs to be. I think we've made big strides in looking at, to understand what people are going through, and not just business. Business is important. I understand there is a delicate balance between the two, and we do still have a job to do. But we could do it in a way that sends a message of support, of validating people, noticing people, being able to just really provide people with the skills, or the strategies they need. That's what we need to do as an agency, not only for our clients but for our staff as well.
Edie Dugger, great conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for your insight and reflections on trauma, and thank you for sharing your story.
Yes, ma'am.